Hey everybody, welcome to Monster Monday pre-show for Monday the 10th of January 2022. I'm DM Galabond, and as usual in pre-show you are listening to the dulcet tones of Syrinscape. This is a sound set called Friendly Tavern, and this is a grouping of sounds that they call musician or more music. So you've got the musicians playing, and you've got the folks enjoying their food and beverages in the background, some clinking of glasses, some laughter. You know, every now and then you'll hear Kira laugh a little bit. You might hear Sandar laugh a little bit. And then from time to time you might hear somebody who had too much to drink and goes just as the music stops. So Syrinscape is great for all of your tabletop RPG games. Gives you great ambient sounds, a lot of fun music for battles and other occasions in your game. Alright, we're going to get started at the top of the hour, and tonight we're going to take a look at the Clockwork Dragon, which is another monster from the Acquisitions Incorporated sourcebook. So, I'm going to mute, and have a few sips of my tea. Join us in the chat, and you can ask any questions. You can ask any questions you may have during the show. Hello viewers, welcome. We'll get started at the top of the hour. Have a little bit of hot tea with lemon and honey. It's always good when you have to talk a lot. Getting down to the last minute before we start. I'm gonna bring the music down just a hair, and why don't we get up from over here near the stage and let's go to a nice quiet corner by the fire over here in this little tavern. And we will get ready to start our show. All right, welcome everybody to Monster Monday. My name is DM Galabond, and this is Monster Monday for January 10th, 2022. And this year, in 2022, not only do we have a little bit of a new look for Monster Monday, but we've got a slightly new format where we're taking a look at monsters that are brand new to 5th edition, that have not appeared in other editions of the game before, and that come to us from other sources, either other IPs like Acquisitions Incorporated, or Magic the Gathering, or Wild Amount, the Critical Role universe. And tonight we're doing our second in a series on the brand new monsters from the Acquisitions Incorporated sourcebook that came out last year. This is the Clockwork Dragon. Right, so we're going to talk a little bit about what the influences for the Clockwork Dragon are historically in D&D, and we are going to deconstruct it a little bit and see sort of how they modified existing monsters from D&D to come up with the Clockwork Dragon, and this is modified mechanically. Cosmetically, I'm sure the Clockwork Dragon is a completely new and original monster. But mechanically, the way the creature works, you can look at that and you can see some of the influences. And that gives us an idea with the way Wizards of the Coast, working with other designers, the way they have created monsters. It's technically not homebrew because it's published by Wizards of the Coast, but it's almost like they're taking a homebrew monster and putting a 5e chassis on it or underneath it. And we're going to take a look at that and see, for us as DMs, when we want to design a homebrew monster, how we can follow their lead, if that's what we want to do. Of course, in your homebrew game, you're free to do whatever you want with your monsters, and I frequently don't follow what Wizards of the Coast would do. I follow what would fit with the power of the players or the PCs in my game. All right, so the Clockwork Dragon, unfortunately, in the actual Acquisitions Incorporated sourcebook itself, we don't get an image of the Clockwork Dragon. But fortunately, when I was out there looking for some artwork during the week, I did find a Tumblr for someone who calls themselves DM Clockwork Dragon. And you can find them on dmclockworkdragon.tumblr.com. And they have a piece of artwork which I presume was commissioned for them. The artist is Olga Drabus. So this is the artwork that Olga created for that, and it kind of matches the description, perhaps not the scale, but the description of what the Clockwork Dragon is said to look like in the Acquisitions Incorporated rulebook. All right, these intricately crafted constructs are typically made to reflect the forms of the metallic dragons, plated in brass, bronze, copper, or faux gold and silver. They are often taken for fine draconic statues at first glance. And then a little bit about the lore of these monsters. It's said that the Clockwork Dragon makes a formidable guardian or defender, with its advanced intellect allowing it to be programmed with a wide range of orders, as well as being capable of wholly independent reactions to potential threats. Though most Clockwork Dragons have a breath weapon that deals fire damage, some might be constructed to deal acid, cold, or lightning damage depending on their maker's whims. And so that is a bit about how their lore is described, if you will. Now, obviously, as a clockwork being, the creature type of the Clockwork Dragon is a construct. And like all constructs, these creatures are made and not born. Some are programmed by their creators to follow a simple set of instructions. Others are imbued with sentience and capable of independent thought. Golems are the iconic constructs. Many creatures native to the outer plane of Mechanus, such as Modrons, are constructs shaped from the raw material of the plane by the will of more powerful creatures. And we're going to talk about, when we talk about the influences of the Clockwork Dragon, we're going to talk about the Modrons. And they have a really interesting history when you go back into the old editions of the game. Okay, as I look at the Clockwork Dragon, I see two really potential prime candidates, if you will, as influences and origins mechanically for the Clockwork Dragon before they started tweaking it to match the CR they wanted and give it the kind of abilities they wanted. And those are Gargoyles and Modrons. And so what we're going to do tonight in our history section is we're going to go back and we're going to take a look at the history of both Gargoyles and Modrons throughout the editions of D&D. All right, so Gargoyles first came to us in Basic D&D, and they, in that edition of the game, they were armor class 5 with 4 hit dice. Now, those asterisks mean that they have 2 special properties that make them tougher than the average 4-hit die monster. So they would be equivalent to about a 5 or a 6-hit die monster. They get 4 attacks per round. They they save like an 8th level fighter. They have a morale of 11. And that's an 11 out of 12, so they hardly ever will get scared and run away. They are magical constructs created by wizards for various tasks, and they're humanoid creatures with horns, claws, fangs, bat-like wings. They're very cunning, at least semi-intelligent, and incredibly patient. They don't ever need food or drink, and they can sit and watch a sight literally for years or decades. And because of the purposes which they were created, they tend to be very territorial. If not still commanded by a wizard, they will normally choose a place like a ruined building, a cave complex, or a mountain, and defend it from all intruders, attacking nearly anything that encroaches on their territory. And it takes magic weapons to hit them, and they're not affected by sleep or charm spells. Alright, so that is the Gargoyle, and here's a picture of the earliest version of the Gargoyle. Alright, then in first edition D&D, AD&D, if you will, the Gargoyle, again, it's armor class 5 and hit dice 4+4, still has the same 4 attacks, still requires a magic weapon to hit. Now it says they're kind of low intelligence creatures, so there's a little bit of a... And it just says they're ferocious predators of a magical nature, typically found amidst ruins or dwelling in underground caverns. They will attack anything they detect, regardless of whether it's good or evil, 90% of the time. And they love best to torture prey to death when it's helpless. Because they're fairly intelligent and evil, they will sometimes serve an evil master of some sort. So in first edition, they kind of get away from the idea that they were constructs, just that they are magical creatures. Now, in the same edition, AD&D first edition, in the Monster Manual 2, is where we get the first mention of the Modrons. Now, you remember the Monster Manual in 5e says that Modrons come from a plane called Mechanus. But when they were first introduced, they come from a plane called Nirvana, a plane of balance and absolute order, equally hot and cold, equally light and dark, made of equal parts solid and liquid. Chief inhabitants are known as Modrons and live in a rigid caste system under the absolute rule of Primus the One. Nirvana is laid out like a great wheel with a tower of Primus at the hub, and so on and so on and so forth. And then it gives a bunch of information about the castes and whatnot. But what we really want to look at is the different types of Modrons. So we have a Modron, armor class 7, 1 attack, and size is small, anywhere from 6 inches to 3 feet. And they are the bulk of the population. They are depicted as a sphere, a metal sphere with 2 legs, 2 stubby wings, an eye, and a mouth. And then the Duodrone looks like a metal sheet of lumber with 4 legs and 2 wings, and they make 2 attacks per round, and they're small, anywhere from 6 inches to 4 feet long. And then there's the Tridrone, which looks like a 4-sided die, and kind of has a bit of the the Zorn going on. 3 legs, 3 arms, 3 eyes, and this one has actually 3 mouths instead of 1 mouth at the top of its head. And they have spidery arms and legs, and their main function is supervise lower orders of Modrons, supervise gross units of 144 Modrons and Duodrones. Then we have the Quadrone. Quadrone is a cube with 2 arms, 2 legs, weapons, and wings. And they make the upper level of workers the plane of Nirvana. The Pentadrone is kind of a weird starfish type thing that has kind of a paralysis gas jet that it can shoot out from the top of its head. And each of its arms has an eye on it, and then it's got 5 legs. And I don't know whether it's supposed to be arms or supposed to be wings. Let's see, does it? Yeah, I guess it's supposed to move. Or have fly movement. Alright, then we have the Decaton, the Hierarch Modrone, which looks like this big weird sphere with a bunch of eyes and tentacles and big elephantine feet. The Nonaton, which is a cylinder which has 3 legs and more of these tentacles. The Octon, which looks like a big mushroom, or a mushroom that looks like a big sombrero that has the tentacles and the eyes at the top of the on top of the cap. The Septon, similarly, has that same kind of thing going on. The Hexton is another hierarch, and it looks a little bit more humanoid. And now they're all starting to look a bit humanoid. The Quinton has, what, I'm guessing, looks like 6 arms there and 2 legs. And then the Quarton has 4 arms and 2 big fan-like wings. The Tertian doesn't have wings, but has a tail. And the Secundus is the Hierarch Modron. Is this guy here. And then finally we have Primus, who is half humanoid, half kind of energy, and one arm has one type of energy and the other arm has the other type of energy. Ruler of all the planes of Nirvana, Primus and Primus alone sets the order, writes the laws, establishes rules and regulations. Huge being, and he appears a normal human in giant form. His hands are unseen, the right swathed in rainbow bright lights, left clouded in inky darkness. Those creatures struck by the light hand must save versus spells will be teleported to Arcadia. Those struck by the left must be saved or be sent to Acheron. And Primus casts spells as a 30th level cleric and a 25th level magic user. Primus may communicate immediately with any of the creatures of Nirvana. This allows Primus total knowledge of the plane. So he is the end all and be all. So these Modrons have a real kind of weird caste society, but they all kind of are very orderly, and within their caste they have the ability to both follow orders and kind of carry out semi-autonomous tasks. And then the weird thing is that after first edition, the Modrons do not appear anymore in the core monster resource books. I think the reason for that is I think they got shunted off to one of the other playable settings in D&D. I'm not sure if they got shunted off to Eberron or if it was to one of the other settings, but I don't have any resources where the Modrons appear in between first edition and 5th edition. So I'm not quite sure what setting they got sent to, but they're kind of talked about as an aside here and there throughout the other editions of the game, but they don't really appear in any of the core areas of the game, and they don't play a role in any of the adventures the way they did in first edition and the way they have in 5th edition. So second edition we get to the Gargoyle, and we also get introduced to the Margoyle, which is an aquatic version of the Gargoyle. Most of everything stays the same, 4+4 hit dice, armor class 5, so a little bit better hit dice, but still has the 4 attacks, and you need a magic weapon or better to hit. Then when we get to 3rd edition, that's where some of the paradigms all change. So armor class, it flips around, so instead of the lower the armor class, the better, the higher the armor class, the better. We also pick up true challenge ratings in 3rd edition, like we have in 5e. So it's a medium monstrous humanoid, and notice it's not a construct in 3rd edition, it's a monstrous humanoid in 3rd edition. 4d8 plus 19 hit dice, armor class of 16, 2 claws and a bite and a gore, so it still has the 4 attacks. Special qualities, damage reduction 10, magic, which means that if you hit it with a non-magic weapon, you have to do at least 11 points of damage to deal damage to it. If you hit it with a magic weapon, it deals full damage. Dark vision, 60 points, or 60 feet, and it can freeze, so that it appears to be a statue. And it's a CR4 monster. All right, then in 4th edition, of course, fourth edition is really weird. Everything changed. It was like they tried to reinvent D&D from the ground up with all the mechanics and everything else. So it's interesting to look at, but and they had some kind of cool monsters in 4E and some cool abilities, but they don't really work the same as any other edition of the game. The Gargoyle was a level 9 lurker, 77 hit points, armor class 25, speed of 6, ground speed, fly speed of 8. That translates to 30 feet ground speed, 40 feet fly speed. Has the flyby attacks, has the claw attack plus 14, the stone form. It becomes a statue, and it gains resist 25 to all damage, regeneration 3, and tremor sense 10. Loses all other senses and can take no actions in stone form other than revert to its normal form as a minor action. And then the Nabasu Gargoyle is a level 18 lurker, armor class 32, 136 hit points. Same speed, just a little bit more deadly, a little bit tougher, and that is your Gargoyle in 4th edition. Now in 5th edition, Gargoyle is a challenge rating 2 monster, so it's toned down a little bit from what it was in 3rd edition. It was a CR4, now it's a CR2, armor class 15, 52 hit points, has the walking speed of 30, the flying speed of 60, resistant to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from non-magical attacks that aren't adamantine. It's immune to poison. It's also immune to being exhausted, petrified, poisoned. False appearance. While it remains motionless, it's indistinguishable from a statue. And it makes 2 attacks, one with a bite and one with the claws. Bite is plus 4, reach 5 feet. And it deals 1d6 plus 2 piercing. Claws plus 4 and deals the same amount of slashing damage. And the Modrons, the Modrons, they now inhabit the plane of Mechanus and tend its eternally revolving gears, their existence a clockwork routine of perfect order. So under the direction of their leader Primus, Modrons increase order in the multiverse in accordance with laws beyond the comprehension of mortal minds. Now, if you'll recall, it was the Modrons, actually Primus, the leader of the Modrons, that in a way is responsible for the Slotty that we looked at, which are those chaotic, evil kind of fiendish toad monsters. They put this gem that's supposed to help bring order in a plane of chaos, and instead it was corrupted by that plane of chaos, and it spawned the Slotty, and every slot that spawned from there gets a piece of that gem embedded in their skull. And then if you can somehow pull that gem out without killing the Slotty, then you gain control over that Slotty. So that is a little bit of a tie-in between the Modrons and the Slot. They're cogs in a great machine. And wouldn't you know that, with the exception of updated artwork, we have just about all of the same types. We have the monodrone, we have the duodrone, we have the tridrone, we have the quadrone, we have the pentadrone, and then actually they don't give us any of the bigger hierarchy. We just get those 5. But the one that we want to take a look at is the quadrone. In particular, because Quadrone has armor class of 16, 22 hit points, and is a CR1. Axiomatic mind, can't be compelled to act in a manner contrary to its instruction. Disintegration is, it makes a fist attack or a short bow attack, +4 to hit, and deals 1d6 +2 piercing damage. And then we come to our subject of tonight, the Clockwork Dragon. So it's an armor class of 16 and 22 hit points. Same as the Quadrone, armor class 16, 22 hit points. Speed is 30 feet, fly 60 feet. Same speed as the Gargoyle. And then it's immune to poison and psychic damage, condition immunities, blinded, charmed, deafened, exhausted, frightened, paralyzed, petrified, and poisoned. Common and draconic. False appearance. While it remains motionless, it's indistinguishable from a metal statue. And it has it gets one attack, but it has two different attack modes. One attack is its bite, +4, reach of 5 feet, and deals 1d10 +2 piercing damage. So it hits a little bit harder with its bite than either the Gargoyle or the Modron does. And it then has its fire breath. Fire breath recharges on a 5 or 6. It exhales fire in a 15-foot cone, and each creature in that area must make a DC 11 dex save or take 4d6 fire damage on a failed save, half as much damage on a successful one. So these are... we're going to talk about why I point to the Gargoyle and the Modrone in a little bit more depth as the influences, mechanically at least, I think, that led us to the Clockwork Dragon. But now let's go and talk a little bit more about how this monster appears in the source campaign and what kind of challenge it poses to your adventurers, and then what kinds of things you can do with it in your own campaigns. All right, so the Clockwork Dragon is a CR1 monster, and what we always try to do is we always try to look at how can we create a hard or challenging encounter with these creatures for a party of 5 PCs within a certain level. And as a CR1 monster, throwing just one of these against a party of 5 first level characters, well, that's already an easy encounter. So you can't have one of these and have it be a hard encounter. A better way to make it a hard encounter for a level 1 party is to add a second Clockwork Dragon. Now, level 2 encounter or level 2 party, it's already a trivial encounter. So if you want to make it a hard encounter, you can add 2 animated armors. Now, of course, as I mentioned every week, we always try to use monsters from the same family, but in this case, not only am I trying to use constructs, I'm trying to use things that are like guardian constructs for because Clockwork Dragons, as we'll see from their origins, they generally are set up to be kind of guardians. Probably very rich, very flashy people that want to impress people with how much money they have, and they would love that the thief that tries to break in and steal from them, the last thing they see is the statue of a dragon come to life and breathe fire on them. That just would be the kind of flashy ostentatiousness that somebody who owns a Clockwork Dragon would want to achieve. For a level 3 party, it's a trivial encounter. So to make it a hard encounter, you would need to add a second Clockwork Dragon and a Rug of Smothering. Once again, a great guardian for people that come into areas that they're not supposed to come into. And the Rug says, oh yes, just jumps on them and smothers them. All right. Now, if you're a player and your party winds up having to face a Clockwork Dragon or multiple Clockwork Dragons, what are some tactics that you can use? Well, first of all, be very observant, because until it moves, a Clockwork Dragon is indistinguishable from a statue of a metallic dragon. In other words, if you see a statue of a metallic dragon, you might want to start then thinking about what you would do if that thing turns out to be a Clockwork Dragon. Don't wait until the dragon turns and then breathes fire on you. Alright, speaking of breathing fire, watch the breath weapon. While the range is limited only 15 feet, the Clockwork Dragon can still breathe fire in a cone or another type of dragon breath depending on the creator's choice. And swift pursuers. Clockwork Dragons can fly at 60 feet per round and still attack. So that means it can keep up with almost any low-level PCs of any race or class, even when those PCs are trying to do nothing but run away. So it's very hard to get away from a Clockwork Dragon as a low-level character. And probably with its programming, it would have a limited range that it would chase anybody because of the fact that, if it runs away, the intruder might have friends, and then as soon as the guardian runs away, those friends would go and try to rob something. So that would be something to think about as a player. Now, as a DM, you're behind the screen and you're going to be using Clockwork Dragons. This is a great jump scare monster, right along with the animated armor, the rug of smothering, those things that just seem like ordinary decorations until they animate and start attacking the party. As you saw in the encounter design, we've paired this with other typical Guardian constructs like animated armor and rugs of smothering. So since the Clockwork Dragon is capable of independent thought and action, in your encounter, you could have the Clockwork Dragon kind of orchestrate the attacks of a group of Guardian constructs. So for instance, a rich noble's study or room in his house where he has some of his valuables stored and displayed to impress his guests. Well, the Clockwork Dragon, statue over there on the wall, it probably is going to be watching everything that goes on in the room. And then when somebody gets too close to the treasure that's not supposed to get close to it, the dragon might trigger the two animated armor constructs to attack first. And then the way that they attack might drive the intruders toward the middle of the room where the rug of smothering is. And the rug of smothering then would join in the attack as soon as the animated armor pushes the intruders that direction. And then finally, once the intruders are weakened by the other guardians, or if it looks like the intruders are going to defeat the other guardians, then the Clockwork Dragon might swoop in. And of course, the dragon would use its breath weapon first, and then use its bite attack each round until that breath weapon recharges. So that would be like some tactics you could use as a DM with the Clockwork Dragon. Now, in terms of the campaign placement, where might you want to put a Clockwork Dragon? Well, the first place to look for inspiration is the adventure it appears in. So in the Acquisitions Incorporated adventure, the Clockwork Dragons, there are, I believe, 4 of them. They appear as guardians in a dwarven enclave at a place called the Ori Vault, where the adventurer takes the party for a wedding. And the wedding gifts are all secured in this vault, along with a magical piece of apparatus the party needs in order to complete their mission in the campaign. So, as magical construct guardians, these 4 Clockwork Dragons are ideal for placement in a fabulously wealthy environment. So, this instance, it's in a Dwarven Hold. But you could, in your game, you could put these guardians in the palace of a sorcerer king, or in the mansion of a retired legendary adventurer, or the tomb of some hero whose exploits are the stuff of myth in your campaign world. Only somebody who's very wealthy could afford to have constructs like this, and it's possible that only someone who wants to flaunt their wealth would use them, because they are very flashy. And keep in mind, they are going to breathe fire, or breathe acid, or breathe lightning, or whatever other breath weapon you decide to give a Clockwork Dragon if you reskin it a little bit. It doesn't list poison, but there's no reason why you couldn't have it breathe poison, because dragons have poison breath. So you could have it deal any of these, and you could deal cold damage, all that kind of stuff. So at least acid and fire, and probably cold, because the cold is going to be frozen and it'll eventually melt. Those all have the potential to actually damage some of the valuables that you're trying to protect by having this guardian attack anybody that breaks in to steal stuff. So, yeah, you would be flaunting your wealth, and you would be the kind of person that would care more about teaching a lesson to those ne'er-do-wells that come around trying to steal my treasure than actually trying to protect the treasure. Because depending on what kind of treasures it is I'm protecting, if dragon breathes fire on it, okay, it might get, like if it's a very fine gold or something, it might get partially melted, or if it's something that's flammable, might get burned up. Who knows? All right. Now, we're going to take a look for reskinning. We're going to first take a look at reverse engineering the Clockwork Dragon and seeing what we can come up with there. So we'll look at reverse engineering from a Gargoyle or a Modron. So the Clockwork Dragon is half the CR of a Gargoyle, which is CR2, and it's equal to the CR of a Quadrone, CR1. So both the Gargoyle and the Quadrone get multi-attack, whereas the Clockwork Dragon gets only one attack. Now, why would you think maybe that the dragon, or what is the offset for the dragon getting only one attack? Well, one offset is that its bite attack already does more damage than either of the than any of the attacks of the Gargoyle or any of the attacks of the Quadrone, and the breath weapon alone can do more damage than all of the attacks of the Gargoyle or all of the attacks of the Quadrone. So the reason it only gets one attack is because it hits harder than these other monsters do. So that's a balancing trick that you can look at when you want to reskin a monster. You want to make something and make it hurt more when it hits. Well, if you're going to leave it as the same kind of CR as the underlying monster, you take the number of attacks, you dial them down, and you ratchet the damage per attack back up. So the attack bonus of the Clockwork Dragon, which is +4, equals that of the Gargoyle, and it's greater than that of the Quadrone. Again, because it has fewer attacks, it has a greater chance to hit than the CR1 Quadrone does. And a Clockwork Dragon has the same hit points and armor class of Quadrone, less than half of the hit points of the Gargoyle, with just a slightly tougher AC. So balancing out its attacks, the difficulty to hit, and the damage survivability places this monster in its current CR. Now, if it had the same armor class as the Quadrone, and it had an armor class, or it had hit points that were similar to the Gargoyle, it probably would be worth bumping it up from a CR1 to a CR2. So more than doubling its hit points and giving it the same kind of thing, just because it's probably going to be around longer in a fight to potentially use that breath weapon more often. So the monster could easily be reskinned to appear as a chromatic or even a gemstone dragon construct using the full array of breath weapon options that are included in Fizban's Treasury of Dragons. So what we've done is we've just taken a quick look here at kind of how they reverse engineered it. And the reskinning we're talking about is just making it kind of different riffs on the different types of dragons. It is supposed to be the Clockwork Dragon is supposed to be a statuette of a metallic dragon, but in your game you could easily turn that into the statue of a chromatic dragon or even a gemstone dragon. But you don't have to be limited to just having it look like a dragon. You can have it look like all kinds of other monsters with a similar stat block, other kinds of things that can fly. And when you're thinking about breath weapons, you could even go further afield and look at some breath weapons of other kinds of monsters and use them for inspiration. For example, a Gorgon. Now, Gorgon is that big metallic bull that has petrification breath. So when it breathes on you, it actually turns you to stone if you fail a saving throw. Now, this has a pretty low DC on its breath weapon save. I think it's DC 11 on the dex save. You could, for the Clockwork Dragon, you could make it like a flying clockwork Gorgon, if you will, and then change its breath weapon type from fire or a draconic breath weapon type to change it to something like the petrification breath weapon, so that if it breathes on somebody, it's going to turn them to stone. And then there's lots of other things. So be very interesting to see what ideas you would come up with for reskinning this. If you have any ideas, go ahead and put them down in the comments below. I'd love to see what you guys come up with. All right, and now it's time to look over and see if we have any questions. I don't think we do at the moment. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead into the wrap up here. And then I'll come back and I will look to see if there are any other questions. All right, so I have been DM Galabon. This has been Monster Monday for January 10th, 2022. I have 3 other live streams that I do every week. Those are all actual play D&D games. On Sunday afternoons at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, we do our Planeswalking 5e D&D game, and they have just begun a dungeon crawl in that game, where they are going in the plane that is inspired by the Magic the Gathering expansion Arabian Nights, and the mechanics and everything are based on the 2nd edition D&D setting Dark Sun. So it's a 5e game where they're fighting 2nd edition monsters that look like Magic the Gathering cards. So if you want an idea of how I homebrew my games, there's a little bit of a taste for you. Then on Thursday nights at 8 p.m. we do Sword Coast Chronicles. That is a 5th edition survey game where we're telling a homebrew story, but the lens we're using to tell that story is the existing 5th edition campaigns. Right now they are in, well, some of them are trying to break out of the Storm King's Thunder storyline. They have rescued King Hecaton, and now they're looking for information about Imrith to see if they can track her down. But 2 of the bards went to Waterdeep. They wanted to buy some magical items, and instead of paying for those items. They tried to swindle a shopkeeper. They tried to swindle a shopkeeper who is an order of some of the trade guilds. He's a member of some of the trade guilds, and there's also the Order of Magus and Protectors, which, when you use magic unlawfully in Waterdeep, they don't like that much. So a couple of the PCs are, they might be getting the party into some trouble. So you'll have to tune in on Thursday night and see what the consequences of that little fiasco have been. All right, and then Saturday night we're doing our Saturday Night Greyhawk. That is a 2nd edition D&D game where we are going back and playing some of the greatest hits of old editions. Right now we are going through the original Temple of Elemental Evil adventure. You can find all of the live streams simulcast on Twitch and on YouTube. All of the archives of all of my streams are on YouTube. And you can find information about our other platforms like our Discord server and some of the other things and other social media on the YouTube channel. And also we have our Patreon if you want to help us out trying to make some more content. All right. Don't see any other questions, so I am going to go over and bring the music back up, and I am going to then go and take a look and see if we can find somebody else who is streaming some D&D, and we will go and we will raid them. So let's see. All right. Whoops. Dungeons and Dragons. And Dungeons and Dragons. Okay. Alright, the Smash Oasis. I'm going to go ahead and raid the Smash Oasis. Tell them we sent you. Take care. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. Hope we see you back here for some more of our live streams. And as always, watch out for the monsters under the bed. Good night, everybody.